So as Pat mentioned, I do come from the commercial construction industry. I've been a part of Balfour Beatty for 26 years, 10 years of that as the national CFO, then the president for a number of years, and now the CEO for the last couple of years. If you're not familiar with Balfour Beatty, we are part of a global construction organization. Our U.S. headquarters is here in Dallas. We've got operations, like Pat just mentioned, in Dallas in most of the cities, which is in the U.S., which is great because I get a perspective of that. And we do about $4 billion a year in the U.S. So we are construction managers. We go at risk to build big things. We are largely full of professional construction management individuals, and we take responsibility to deliver to cost, to scale, to scope the projects that we are entrusted. Pat mentioned some of the Dallas projects. You might recognize some of our U.S. projects as most of the theme hotels at Disney, the Atlantis Resort in the Bahamas, Seattle Space Needle, Mayo Clinic, things like that are things that we specialize in. So anyway, it's an honor to be here, and I got to tell you, it was wonderful to hear your presentation. The great thing is I don't have to be an expert on all those statistics. The reason they brought me here is to give you a perspective from what I see every single day, because our number one determinant of success is to know where the money is going to go in the U.S. And we've got to be there years before it gets there, or we miss the opportunity to get those projects and to get into that industry. So it's our job to know where the money's really going to go. And in every one of our cities, we have people that are dedicated to listening to information like you just heard and soaking up all the market forecasts and the statistics. I'm not going to offer you much from that perspective. You've just heard a lot there. But the other half of how we succeed is because we're in with the major corporations and the city leaders and the commercial developers, and we're working with their capital plans 10 years in advance to be able to understand where are they going to go. And so that's probably the perspective that I can offer you that might be helpful. So I was asked to talk about two things. What do you see from a construction perspective, and what's happening in the construction industry? So I'm going to talk about three things. I'm going to offer you my perspective, talk a little bit about some exciting innovation. The construction industry is going through a tremendous revolution right now. It's full of opportunity, whether you want to participate in it or whether you want to service it. It's full of opportunity. And then I'll tell you a little bit about some needs we have in the talent area. So first, what do I know about the economy from the construction sector? First thing I would tell you is, even though you heard about some headwinds, I promise you, Texas is the hottest market in the U.S., and it's going to stay that way for a while. We work, all the corporations that you mentioned, we get to work with years in advance before they even announce. We've got the opportunity to build the Liberty headquarters, and so we get to work with those organizations. Of all the cities in the U.S., there is no more activity going on anywhere than those corporations that are evaluating coming to Dallas right now. There are many in the planning works, there's many in the evaluation works, and it's like nothing else. And, one of the things that I see is with all the other markets, they tend to rise and fall because of a sector, right? An oil sector in Houston gets hot or whatever the case may be. I don't think that's what's driving the North Texas economy. From what I can tell, it's structural. I mean, there are structural things in Dallas that are going to keep it strong for a long time. So you've got, a business-friendly Texas, right, all ready to start out with. But you've got, the availability of land to develop. You've got a cheap cost of living. Most of all, you've got an absolute abundance of educated, skilled labor like no place else in the U.S. You've got ease of access to other places in the U.S. There's no other city that has those dynamics. So we also work up in the Midwest and places like that. Those cities are losing, in the last decade, they've lost 20 to 40% of their populations. 20 to 40%, and they're all coming to Texas, to be honest. So tremendous things there are going on. So I do think it's here to stay for quite some time, even if we do face some headwinds. I think some of the most interesting things will be some of the challenges that Dallas faces over the next couple of years, because we also get to see some of those. For instance, on the infrastructure side, we have an infrastructure business as well. And on the infrastructure side, as well planned as the city of Dallas is, it's still going to be very strained over the next 10 years, because I don't think anybody envisioned the type of growth that has come. The highways, right, the roads, et cetera. Water's a big issue for Texas. We do water facilities as well. Dallas is going to have water issues as well. And I think it's got one other issue that it'll have to face, and that is it is still what I call a politely segregated city between the North and the South, right? And it's kind of just lived that way for quite some time. As that growth continues to come on, it's going to continue to strain that dynamic. I applaud the folks that are developers and do have vision that are working on developing south of where we are right now, because there are some great things going on. So anyway, that's the first thing I tell you is, even if you get a little bit bummed out because you say it's maybe not quite as good as it has been or could be, it's better than any place else. The only other cities, and we're in almost all of them, the only other cities that I would say rival Dallas, and they really don't come close. From a city planning standpoint, maybe a Denver, maybe a Charlotte. Cities like that are also well positioned for growth, but nothing like Texas. So that'd be the first thing. The second thing that I'd tell you about from an economy standpoint is, in a very less sophisticated way than what you just articulated. I've been in the industry for 26 years. I've lived through now 3 recessions and kind of the ups and downs. And we've kind of, in the construction industry, we've got our own little construction cycle clock that tells us what's coming and how long things are going to be good and where to be. You may laugh at this, but we kind of equate it to a 24-hour day, right? And so at night, when it's dark and all the private developers and all the private markets are asleep, the federal government is spending like crazy. When they don't have money, they're still spending like crazy, right? And that's exactly what happened in the last recession. And then what's interesting is, as long and as deep as that recession was, year after year we said, when are we coming out? When are we coming out? But what's interesting, and this happens every time, about 12 to 18 months before we start to, quote, officially come out, here comes all the corporate money that's been built up on the shelves. It starts to kind of rally for recovery and invest for recovery. And it's not daylight yet. These guys are still before the dawn, and they're starting to invest that money. And our clients, Microsoft, Amazon, Intel, all these clients start just pooling their money and building in fab centers and big things, because they can tell. They half create it, and they can half, I think, just sense when it's coming. And they kind of pool up like a bunch of salmon getting ready to go upstream. And so that's what happened this time. And then as soon as the daylight comes, here comes all the commercial developers, right? Because they're too skittish to come out when it's dark. But as soon as it's light, they come out, because they got to make hay. They know they got to make hay. They got one day to make hay, and the sophisticated ones know to get out there and get going. And that's exactly what happened, right? And then the next people that come out sometime in the afternoon of the day are what I call, the really speculative money. To be honest, we kind of call that the stupid money, because it's kind of the less disciplined money, and all of a sudden there's these wild dreams out there, and people that are not really experienced in these markets start putting money into it. That's when it's not far till dark again. And so I know you're probably laughing at my unsophisticated way of thinking, but it really works. It's been the way. And so the question is, okay, what do you see? What time is it now? And from our way of looking at it, it feels to us like it's kind of early afternoon, which may sound really bizarre, and I'll tell you why. Because our big corporate clients, they're still aggressively planning on investment in this cycle. They are still aggressively ready to put down the money and go forward. The commercial developers are still on the front end of much of their planning and thinking, right? And to be honest, the stupid money hasn't shown up too much yet. So, I realize everyone says it's a different world than it used to be, and I think in many ways it is, but I think in other ways it's the same old world, right? Same old cycle. So that's a little bit what we see. Two markets that I thought I might mention, because they're getting more interesting in Texas. One is the multifamily market, apartments and condos, cranes all over this state. That part is not unique to Dallas. Every major city in America looks like that. It's insane how much multifamily apartment and condo work is going on. We got a chance, again, we saw it coming, so we actually organized a business around it years before it got here. We went into it big time. We do about $1 billion worth of work at any one time in the multifamily multifamily world. We've actually started to pull back from that quite a bit. There's still good things going on. There's still good deals to be had. There's plenty of them. But we're getting much more choosy, because I do think this is a market that I think we're somewhere in the final third stretch of this run of multifamily. And it's a funny market. I don't think one can say, well, it's 6 months away or it's a year away. I don't think it's 6 months away. I think it's probably at least a year away before you start to see it tail off. But then sometime, I think right after, and from all the information we have, I do think it starts to pull back a little bit. The other market, oops, I'm getting the hurry up. Wow, I didn't get through 1 point. The only other one I was going to mention to you is, let me tell you 1 point on innovation. I do want to tell you just one little plug for our industry. It's a time of revolution. There's lots of exciting things going on. So our industry has been less sophisticated than most for a long time, but the great thing is it's really coming into its own with technology and supply chain management, many of these things. So the typical building, like this building right here, probably a $200 million building, is built with 40% of waste in it, which means $80 million was wasted by the lack of sophisticated technology, supply chain management, collaboration, all those things that other industries have come on to. Our industry is coming onto it very, very quickly, which is creating huge opportunities to serve it if you're in an organization that can serve it with lean technologies or whatever the case may be. But it's also creating a great opportunity for talent. My last plug on talent, because I'm getting the real quick hook, is we are underserved by women and minorities. Everybody talks about the local skilled labor, and that's clearly a need. At the management, at the leadership level, we need women, we need minorities, and we are aggressively looking for those. It's got great opportunity. So with that, hopefully I got close to my 12 minutes. Thank you, Pat.